Hi, comrade. Welcome to our podcast series. These episodes feature the best of Lab-Left, an international forum organized by Szikra Movement in collaboration with Rosa Luxemburg Foundation. We gathered in Budapest in November 2024 in order to discuss how to win from the left. Thanks for tuning in.
The War of Position panel focused on institutional politics.
It featured Li Andersson MEP from the Left Alliance, Finland, Luis Fazenda from Bloco, Portugal,
Arlind Corey from Nevizia Bashke, Albania,
Filip Rudi from Razem, Poland,
and Lokman Sazan from Dem, Turkey.
It was moderated by David Broder, Jacobin, Germany.
So here we are with David Broder. Thanks for being with us, David.
Thanks for inviting me.
And thanks for accepting a very ungrateful spot, 10 a.m. moderation after a Saturday party.
I was delighted.
And we were delighted as well. It was a very interesting conversation, bringing together different political leaders from different political parties. What are your main takeaways?
I think what we spoke about really is the struggle of moving from representation, from having a voice for the left, to building power, to turning movements into organized structures that change the way politics is done, that organize people, that bring social movements' voice into institutional politics. That comes with a lot of problems too, with the alliances it means, with the reliance on working together with parties with very different interests. Are we the left wing of a sort of broad progressive bloc? And so some of the interesting ideas I think from the panel were precisely about how to get people involved in politics who aren't usually like Li Andersson, for example, the member of the Finnish Left Alliance, talked about the kind of outreach that her party does, not only to like activists or trade unionists, but to just ordinary working class people and their problems. I think that's very important for what the left does.
So you felt the set of challenges faced by these parties working in very different contexts were broadly similar, or there were sharp divides?
I wouldn't say there were sharp divides, but there were certainly important differences. I mean, we started the conversation by talking about, there's a difference between, you just edit out all of my nonsense. Okay. I'll begin the answer to that question, yeah?
Yeah, sure.
So one point I kind of started the discussion from was there's a difference between authoritarian and far-right threats to democracy, and then the problem of the weakening of democracy in the sense that people aren't participating, that politics is reduced to professionals, NGOs, and so on, rather than to mass politics. And so from that perspective, of course, there were important differences. After all, if we think of we talk about authoritarian turn in a country like Finland, then it is quite different to what's happening in contemporary Turkey. Nonetheless, I don't think I'd say that there were sharp contrasts between the speakers' approaches, in a sense, because the answer in both cases is about building mobilization and participation. We can't defend democracy by defending words on a piece of paper or just formal rights. It is actually about building movements, building organization.
I found the part of the conversation when they were mentioning different social blocs they were trying to mobilize particularly interesting, because I feel that's the kind of thinking, kind of strategic thinking that's often missing on the left. So Arlind was also saying they're trying to unite like pensioners and students and miners and bringing these different groups together, but then it's pensioners who are very active suddenly because they have time.
Yeah, and it's easy to fall into a kind of narration where it's easy to fall into a kind of narrative where we've lost the working class who hate us and all support the far right. So it's important to recognize that working class could be an identity or a banner. That's bound to include lots of different groups and interests. So what you have to do is to bring together people with different conditions, different problems under some sort of unifying agenda. And that's what the idea of the bloc is, I suppose. So, of course, we're never going to be able to get the support of everyone, but I think it's important to aim to be broad, and also, with the kind of problem he mentioned, that, pensioners have lots of time, so easier to mobilize politically. That's a real problem in terms of how we think about, like, how do the parts of the working class who are most often ignored, perhaps invisibilized, also because, if you're doing 2 jobs and doing reproductive labor as well, then it's harder for you to be politically active. So, there's some examples of parties trying to get over that problem, but it's something we have to be very conscious about, definitely.
Yeah, and I think the conversation about what the working class is and what we mean by it was particularly interesting in this context as well. And I liked the way the different speakers were bringing different perspectives on this issue.
Yeah, because of course we can't just fall into sort of a backward looking or sort of a stereotyped idea of the working class as, men wearing the blue overalls, hammering at big bolts. So yeah, of course it's vital that we both try and remain, try and do a left-wing politics that is indeed oriented towards class, that isn't just like a nebulous, nice liberal ideas, but that talk about people's material problems. But, working class politics doesn't just mean like the bread and butter, doesn't just mean, wages and welfare. It's also about creating an optimistic and inclusive vision of society that can include the working class in its diversity.
So thanks for bringing a clear-sighted but also optimistic perspective to the forum. It was great to have you, David.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Városi tornyok most oly némán álltunk. Boldogságra virágcsokorra várunk.
Hi everyone. Thanks for making it here this morning. My name's David Broder. I'm Europe editor at Jacobin magazine, and I'll be moderating this panel. And the subject is the war of position. So, of course, the quote from Antonio Gramsci, the Italian Marxist, talking about building popular power, building revolutionary forces, not just being institutions, but building the power to overcome them, to change them. I think this discussion is particularly important at a time when there's a lot of discussion about threats to democracy, the danger to democracy. Of course, Kamala Harris ran her election campaign very strongly focusing on that theme. And a lot of the criticism of the campaign focused on, like, this didn't work electorally. But nonetheless, we can see that there really are threats. There really are forces that are anti-democratic. There are far-right parties rising. I think that this kind of poses a question, kind of both of, defending democratic rights, but also of revitalizing democracy and participation in a much broader sense. Getting people involved, not just in electoral politics, but more generally in social change. So I'll start by introducing the speakers who'll be talking about that today. So starting on the far left, very old joke, particularly if you attend a lot of conferences like this. So Arlind Koy is the chairman of Levica Bashke in Albania, left-wing party there. And last May, he was candidate for the mayor of Tirana and came in 3rd place. He's also a lecturer in political science at the University of Tirana. Then Lee Anderson is a member of the European Parliament from Finland and is the speaker or leader of the Left Alliance in Finland.
Actually, I just stepped down.
Just stepped out. Okay. But you did very well you were most popular candidate in the election, no? In the European election. Okay. Lokman Sazan is a member of the People's Equality and Democracy Party in Turkey, DEM, and a spokesman for foreign affairs. Yes. And has a bachelor's degree in sociology and a master's degree in cultural studies, and is an advisor in the Turkish parliament since 2018. Then Filip Hudi from Poland is co-chair of the National Council at Razem, the Left Together party, and coordinator of its electoral programs in all elections since 2019. And then Luís Fazenda is a founder of the Portuguese Left Bloc, Bloco de Esquerda, former vice president of Portugal's parliament, and an activist with the unions movement. So I'm going to start off by talking, by asking each of our panelists a question about authoritarianism and democracy in their country, and then we'll talk more about their parties and the broader challenges facing the left today. So let's start with Arlind. Earlier this year, the socialist prime minister of Albania, Edi Rama, celebrated a deal on migration controls with the far-right government in Italy, which he praised Albania's role as a site for processing migrants as an expression of European solidarity and European values. What do you think that this says about politics in Albania and about the European project?
The last thing Edi Rama and his government cares about is migrants' rights or democracy or the rule of law or anything like that. This deal came as a surprise to everyone in Albania, except Edi Rama and some of his colleagues. He basically made a deal with Meloni without asking anyone, without doing any kind of consultation, just to transform Albania in an outsourcing place to manage the migrant question for Italy and maybe other countries. Germany is asking the same thing. The UK is asking the same things to Albania. And what this deal practically means is that the Albanian territory will be leased to these foreign countries to do somehow their dirty work there, to mistreat migrants or transform Albania in a deterrent to migrants. They're giving the message to the rest of the earth, to very poor people, don't you dare to go to the West because you'll end up in a very bad place called Albania. This is the real message. So basically, he hasn't asked anyone. He just gave our territory to these foreign powers, and the Albanian institutions won't have any kind of power or any kind of capacity to observe what is going there, or to migrants won't have the right to appeal to the Albanian institutions, to the Albanian judiciary, anything. These areas are areas of extraterritoriality. So basically, the Italian law now, or next year maybe German law or UK law, will be imposed on this kind of Guantanamos in Albania. And this says a lot about the political system in Albania. The authoritarianism is not something new in Albania. It's not that we previously had a democratic liberal system and now we have this bad luck of being a half authoritarian country. It has been the rule in Albania from the early 90s until now. Before that, we had a Stalinist regime. You know more than I do about those kinds of regimes. So it's not that our political system is, going from good to bad. It's just transforming itself. Okay, we have growing signs of being more authoritarian, but it is not a matter of quality. It is a matter of quantity. It's becoming more of something bad we had even before. What is really new in Albania is that, for example, the economic oligarchy and organized crimes are no longer junior partners in ruling the country. They are becoming like equal partners with the political bureaucracy in ruling the country. This is maybe the novelty of our situation.
Thank you. Lee, lots of people might think of Finland as a kind of classic home of social democracy, strong welfare institutions. Currently, the government in Finland is a right-wing government that includes the True Finns or Finns party. Second time they've been in government. In their plans to remodel the Finnish welfare state, it seems that they've embarked on trying to curtail the power of trade unions. We had an article in Jacobin by Otto Kuurinen about this recently, where he spoke of neoliberal authoritarianism. Is it over the top to talk about authoritarianism? Is it are there attacks on democratic institutions in Finland?
My answer I would say it depends on how you phrase the question. Are there attacks on democratic institutions? Yes, absolutely. Can you call Finland authoritarian? No, I would not say that, especially not on this panel. But I think At the time of the European election, you said, Finland is known as like a cozy social democratic country, but at the time of the European election, it was also the only country, except for Italy, with the far-right government. So that's why I think it's also important and of general interest to actually see what is happening in Finland, and also to identify the steps in the wrong directions, because as I said, there are clear attacks that we should worry about. I think one dimension of how you see these kind of authoritarian traits or features in their policies is the attacks on, for example, the public broadcasting company, which is losing funding a lot now. They are also cutting funding for the cultural sector and for civil society organizations to an extent we have not seen before in Finland. And these are all attacks against voices that are free, critical voices in a democratic society. They have attacked democratic rights in the labor market, especially the trade unions. This is very important for the true Finns. They are clearly anti-union. So they have restricted the right to strike, which is also what the European trade unions are messaging now, is that they are seeing increasing attacks on the right to strike in different places in Europe, also from the side of the employers. And I think this is one of the democratic institutions we need to be strong in defending, because it's also an emancipatory right. I have used this example of the young Swedish car mechanics that went out to strike against Elon Musk a lot, because I think it's such an inspiring example of how you can have 10, 12 really young guys and girls, in the northern Sweden that actually take up a fight against Elon Musk, and they can do it because of the right to strike. The worst attack on democratic institutions in Finland has been the new asylum law that was passed. Finland had a situation where Russian border authorities allowed asylum seekers to pass the Russian side of the border to Finland. And as a response to this, the government pushed through a law which legalizes pushbacks at the eastern border. And it was clear at the time of acceptance of this law that it was contrary not only to the Finnish constitution, but also to EU law and international human rights law. So there was not a single legal expert that would have given the green light to the law as it was presented. They got a 5-6 majority in parliament, because you need that to pass laws that are contrary to the constitution. So the Social Democrats helped them to pass this through. And as a precedent, it is extremely dangerous, because it's the first time ever in the history of Finland that we have knowingly passed laws that are contrary to binding international human rights law and EU law. Donald Tusk in Poland is very happy about this. So he's now using this Finnish asylum law, saying that this should be an example for the rest of Europe. Using this argument about how Finland is a cozy social democratic country that has always talked about rule of law, so it can't be very bad if the Finns passed it. So I think in this way you can also see how these parties and authoritarian forces use kind of Finland to pass on policy that would be maybe impossible if the initiative came from Hungary or Poland. But if you look at the actual policy, it is extremely bad from the point of view of migrants and from the point of view of rule of law and human rights.
Thank you. Lokman, Erdogan's regime in Turkey is a classic example of an authoritarian strongman in power, but also other forces in Turkish politics support anti-democratic and repressive measures, including against your party and its ancestors. And your party calls for an end to the one-man regime and a democratic republic in Turkey. But what would that look like? And also, what allies do you have in that perspective? What forces are there in Turkish society that favor democratization and a change in the structure of the state?
It's not easy to say that we have really quite enough the alliance in Turkey against the Erdogan regime, but as a Kurdish movement that we have been struggling and try to build a huge alliance since maybe 20 years. And in 2014, we could manage to establish the party with the different segments of the society, including the left parties and the unions and the individuals and women movement and ecologist movement. And after the 2014, we could manage to have a 13% of the votes, and that was the first time that the Erdogan's parties has lost the election. And then he started to attack to our party. And we have a kind of the 6 different political parties inside of the DEM party. It's a kind of the umbrella party and union parties. And we have also the different alliance when we run the election all together. So we cannot say that we are only a political party who seeks to be in the parliament, and we are the kind of the social movement. And we keep conducting our politics not only at the parliament, at the streets with the people. And that's why, despite the Erdogan's regime attacks to our party, and now over the 7,000 activists in our party imprisonment, and we keep still continuing to fighting and struggling against Erdogan, because we have the millions of voters, not only voters, supporters on the street. And it is really hard to say that we can manage alone by ourselves to stop the Erdogan's anti-democratic implementation or policies, because the main opposition parties also needs to, not to stay only inside of the, the system, inside of the parliament, and also touch the people on the street. Because nowadays, the Erdogan wants to change the constitution, that he wants to become to one more again a candidate and president like Putin did, and maybe Orban will be, I don't know. But the main opposition party is kind of the barrier between the society who is against the Erdogan implementation and about supporting his policies sometimes, and they have consensus with him.
In Poland, there was a government until last year that was widely taken as one of the worst examples of authoritarianism in the European Union, led by the Law and Justice Party. And in last year's elections, the array of opposition parties added together, some of them in coalition, managed to defeat that government, even though it had taken various steps to entrench itself in power. My question is, since that election result, what's changed in Polish politics? Has the new government led by Donald Tusk marked a real improvement and move away from the forms of authoritarianism that we're developing? And how is it different in its policy?
Okay, so indeed, last year we had an election in October, and luckily our system is a multi-party system, so we didn't have to form. We don't have like for the lower chamber of the parliament. We don't have the single seat constituencies, so we could run in multiple parties, and essentially this time, despite the Law and Justice Party getting the most votes and the most seats, it was not enough for them to have 231 seats in the parliament, so they couldn't form a government. So a government was formed from parties from 3 coalitions. One was led by Donald Tusk, who became the prime minister. The other one is the joint, like, liberal, agrarian, conservative coalition, which is also somewhat problematic. And the other one was the left bloc. And Razem has run for the election within this left bloc. However, Razem was not needed to form a government, and what that meant was that we had no say in the coalition agreement. We had no say in what could be done, and in that scenario, if we wanted to enter the government, we would have to rely on the left bloc, on the older post-communist party, to uphold its standards, uphold its program, uphold its values. And let's just say that would be a very naive thing to do, because right now it is clear that they have joined the class struggle, but on the wrong side. Less than a week ago, they have decided to gut our health system by removing an equivalent of 1.5 billion euros from the system, when it is critically underfunded and we need at least 5-6 billion euros more, because they wanted to give handouts to businesses and to reduce their contribution, and the left in this government also supports that. And what has changed is essentially the institutional part, because because the Law and Justice Party went really straight, really hard into institutions. They took over the state media and they turned it into their propaganda channel. And this has changed. This certainly has changed. Now it is now this channel has a slightly pro-Donald Tusk bias, but it's tolerable. It's within let's say some margins. We have some issues. We had some issues with the courts as well, and this is pending because we still have a president supported by the Law and Justice Party, and he is the blocking force. So we cannot do some reforms regarding that. However, in the economic sphere, nothing has changed essentially, because the economy is not ruled by the parties; it is ruled by the capital, and this hasn't changed. The real estate lobby, and sectors like that, they are giving money to any party which furthers their agenda, be it Law and Justice, be it the current ruling bloc. So essentially, they are funding a super majority in the parliament, helping them win elections, so that we cannot have a proper public housing and stuff like that. And what Lee said about the border is absolutely true. We have the same problem. We have a little border with Russia, but also we have a bigger border with Belarus, and Belarus is ruled by Lukashenko, who is a very dear friend of Vladimir Putin. So we have, maybe a friend is a little bit too kind to him. He's a puppet, yeah. So he does the same thing with people seeking asylum, with pushing them to the Polish side, and yes, and Donald Tusk is proudly continuing the policy of the Law and Justice Party by enforcing pushbacks, also trying to legalize them in our parliament, but also in July they legalized shooting those people. So if you have a border guard, if they shoot somebody on this border there, they are completely free of any charges. They cannot be prosecuted even if they violated many different laws. So in that regard, we still have a long way to go. And I'm proud to say it, but also it's very sad that the Lewica bloc, because of Razem, was the only party, the only coalition running in the last year's elections that was strongly against those pushbacks.
This year marks, of course, 50 years since the Portuguese Revolution. Just the other day, I saw a great film about it, actually, called Prazer Camaradas, about foreign left-wing activists who came to work in a cooperative in Portugal during the revolution. And obviously it was a very inspiring example of the revolution of a popular revolution in modern Europe. But today, also 50 years on, we see the rise of Chega in Portugal, a far-right party in a country that long didn't have a far-right party in parliament. What do you think is left of the spirit and of the forces generated by the revolution? Do they remain an active force in Portuguese public life? And what can be done to resist this sort of apparent rise of the far right?
A lot of laws, real social conquests, and an advanced constitution, and legal unions and legal social movements. They are all a legacy from our democratic revolution of 74. Everything is still there, despite the 18% of a fascist party that we had not have before. But we have the barriers of resistance to far right. We have to organize them, unify them, put it in action. But we have all we need for that. Of course, there are threats. Of course, now we have some persecution to migrants. We have bizarre situations as demonstrations in front of our headquarters from people of far right. It's a new phenomena in Portugal. But so far we have a liberal democracy and rule of law and independence of the judicial power, free press. Our party is still in the television debates. All the parties are in television debates, including the fascist party. So we are in a phase that we are living the situation, the status of a bad surprise, and organizers to counter back.
So we talked a little about the authoritarian forces that ought to limit democratic rights or would be created against migrants. But there's also another. So there's authoritarian and far-right threats to democracy, but there's also another threat to democracy, which is the hollowing out of participation, and particular working-class participation. So we can see this in the electoral turnout. And obviously in many elections, a lot of the story often told to explain the rise of authoritarian and far-right parties is they're winning working-class support. Another school of analysis points to the fact that more people aren't voting, so they're kind of winning in a hollowed-out democracy. So that poses a kind of question for the left of, how does it make people, how does it encourage people to participate? How does it contrast that trend? So I'll ask each of you to kind of comment on whether you think that's how true you think that is, and what a threat that is, and how it plays out in your own country as well. So Arlen, would you like to?
The election participation in Albania per se is not a very big problem. We have a participation rate of 49%, but you should take in consideration that almost half of the Albanian population lives abroad. So basically, it is a very high real participation rate. The next elections will be the first where the Albanian diaspora will vote via post. So we'll have to see what is the real participation rate in the Albanian elections. The Albanian working class has always voted, but not considering itself as a working class. They have not voted as workers because, unfortunately, the workers' movement in Albania has been very weak in the recent decades. We don't have strong trade unions. We didn't have almost never strong trade unions. Paradoxically, the first and the last time we had strong trade unions were during 1990 and 1991, when workers and students overthrew the previous Stalinist regime. Afterwards, they just disintegrated. Several years ago, the Prime Minister of Albania, which is the chairman of the Socialist Party of Albania, unashamedly told Italian investors, please come and invest in Albania because luckily we don't have any trade unions. So it says a lot about not only Edi Rama and his government attitude towards workers, but also about the trade union or the workers' movement in Albania. On the other hand, the political center in Albania is still holding, which means, this corrupt center-left, center-right parties is still holding. And they use clientelist methods to gather votes. They use the carrot of, distributing public jobs to poor people, or even vote buying. So there's a lot of criminal money being invested in election machineries in the last months before each elections. And on the other hand, we have this paradox of deteriorating public services, but increasing the number of public employees. So clientelism is the carrot of all main political parties in Albania. Also, we have the stick method, which means that, for example, public employees in Albania are basically threatened to vote for the current government. But not only them, also their family members should vote for the current government. Otherwise, they fear they will be fired. On the other hand, we have the problem of, for example, small businesses. They operate in a mood of quasi informality. The government tolerates it somehow, but when it comes to elections, they knock at your door and say you should vote properly. Otherwise, tax employees will come to your small business and ask you what what you should have done legally. But on the other hand, we have found this left party in Albania, Levizia Bashk, 2 years ago. And we have tried a lot, even before that, to organize workers with some kind of success, especially with miners, with oil field workers, and with, for example, textile workers around Albania. And one of the reasons we have found the Levizia Bashk is that we hope to give workers, but also other subordinate classes, an electoral option. They should have an electoral address, and they should be able to participate politically in this process. So basically what we're trying to do is to build some kind of class alliance between workers on the one hand, but also, other subordinate classes, pensioners, which are among the poorest in Albania. We have an average pension of 180 euros, and you cannot live with that in Albania. If your children don't add up something in terms of remittances from abroad, you basically will starve in Albania with 180 euros. So basically what we're trying to do is connect workers, pensioners, but also professional middle classes in Albania. We had a relatively successful local campaign last year in Albania. I was a candidate for the mayorship of Tirana, and surprisingly, we had like 5% of the vote, and an important chunk of these votes came from the professional middle classes. So we hope that we have strong hopes on this kind of alliances between workers, pensioners, other subordinate classes, and the professional middle class.
Yeah, so the question raises many thoughts. The first one is, of course, who is the working class? Like, how do we define that, especially within the left? Because I think sometimes in these discussions, we also exclude groups that, from our definitions of the working classes, that are absolutely are part of our own base. At least I talk now from my own national context, but usually the true Finns do very well among the poorest voters, actually. So if you look at people who are unemployed, they are on sick leave, or students and so on, the left usually do better in those voting groups. Also, in the urban areas, we have a lot of migrant communities in areas that are absolutely working class, and they do not do very well in those areas either. Usually the left is better there. So I think we should be careful also not to kind of define their voter base or just a part of the voter base as the working class, but also take into account the diversity of the working class, as you said today. I think another interesting feature is that if you look at Finland, for example, where we have lost the stigma around the far right. That is what happens when they get a place in government. So we don't have this kind of anti-fascist consensus or stigma around the parties anymore. And what happens then is also that they are able to expand their voter base from being like a protest party to also reaching middle class and upper middle class voters, which is what we have seen in Finland. If as a party, if you get 18 or 20%, that is not only, angry working class voters. That's a lot of other people as well. And especially, I think the most prominent figure in the true Finns, called Jussi Halla-aho, he is a real fascist. He usually does very well also in areas with high income earners, who then give their votes to these anti-immigration, like Islamophobic politicians. So that is also their voter base at the moment. The challenge for the left, of course, is how we are able to do politics in a way where we can be a uniting force for these very diverse groups of people today, representing the working class, representing those who want to change in society and who want to vote for solidaric policies. We have been trying to focus a lot on uniting themes, just focusing on the demands that unite people and resistance to the government as uniting themes. But I think the biggest challenge for parties is that parties are no longer mass movements anywhere. So how do you mobilize big with organizations that are not mass movements? And then you have to be able to work together with the social movements and the trade unions, and you have to be able to do campaigns in ways that you can reach out to people and organize them, although they are not kind of part of your existing party structures. So I guess that's a challenge that we all fumble with today and try and do our best.
Due to the AKP's government implementation against our party, that we have really serious challenges to, have contact with the working class, because according to government that we are being terrorized and the criminalized against the society. For example, if there is any strike on the streets for the working class, and if one of our representative MPs or mayors go to the solidarity with them, they are afraid that we are in there, because the government system that they are engaging with the terrorism. So since 10 years that despite our effort to be involved, with the working class and run the election campaign and, for their rights, sometimes we decide to be not with them because of the government attitude would be worse. And even in Turkey right now, after the state of emergency and the failed coup attempt, even the working class cannot have their demonstration. And for like 3 years, the right to strike has been suspended by the decree of the Erdogan. So it is really hard to have engaged with them for very, very long time, not only for the political parties, and also the union cannot have, the solidarity and, the run campaign with them.
Okay, in the Polish case, we have a similar problem with the rise of the far right, further right than the previous Law and Justice Party, because whatever you say about the Law and Justice Party, there are worse beings on earth. We have this like our Konfederacja movement, which is a gathering of like free market libertarians, nationalists, outright fascists, and people like that. We have recently exported some of them to Brussels. So yes, unfortunately. And they had a pretty comfortable time to grow, because they had and have no hand in government. But because of the Law and Justice Party, the liberal media and the fan base of Donald Tusk and people like them, they were strongly focused on the Law and Justice Party, and they said their enemy. They decided that their enemy is Jarosław Kaczyński, the head of this party, and they completely missed the rise of the far right. Even going to the lengths to decide that maybe this Konfederacja party isn't so bad, because it can take some votes from the Law and Justice Party. So essentially, by getting a tunnel vision into beating this Law and Justice Party, they slept on the rise of the bigger threat. And even liberal media, when this Konfederacja party has proclaimed that they want to get rid of the taxes, stuff like that. Of course, they want a white Catholic Poland, stuff like that. No gay people, no trans people, and all of that. So the liberal media, the line often was, okay, maybe this Konfederacja isn't so good on the human rights side, but they speak true things about economy. Yeah. So essentially, this was over and over in the media. Because Konfederacja pushed the Overton window regarding the taxes in the direction that the liberals, that the neoliberals and the corporate lobbies wanted, and so they had some room to grow. And now they if elections were held now, they could be the third force in the parliament, and they could be the deciding factor who rules. Also, Konfederacja, apart from this anti-taxation messaging, which really resonates in Poland, because the idea that everybody could be rich, but the evil state, the evil government with those taxes really stops everyone from being rich is prevalent, and we have really big problems with that. But the other side is that Konfederacja runs on anti-establishment positions, and also placing itself as an anti-corruption party. And it is really difficult to fight with that because basically all the big parties are somehow involved in smaller or bigger corruption schemes. Like the party of Donald Tusk is famously corrupt in many local governments. So they have all the same issues that the Law and Justice Party, with putting people into public enterprises. The Agrarian Party, essentially they are the worst in that. But also the old post-communist left has the same problem. Recently, in my hometown of Wrocław, a mayor supported by those post-communists has been arrested by the Anti-Corruption Bureau, and still our former partners, because we broke with the left, and hopefully I will have some time to tell you a bit more about it. Our former partners still are supporting him, even though the charges are really serious. Like the guy bought his diploma, bought his MBA diploma, and then used it to participate in the local government Erasmus. In a way that he went into some public enterprises in other municipalities, and took money from that and invited some people from there to Wrocław, and this was the whole scheme to enrich themselves. So this and in this scheme, basically all the big parties were involved. So Konfederacja has a really fertile ground to go on the anti-corruption route, as they until recently were the only force that could speak about it and not have some easy counterexamples of corruption within their own party, because they haven't held government.
We have a broad concept of the working class, as well as Lee said, and we work with trade unions and social movements. Now in Portugal we have big demonstrations, kind of as a ritual, in the 1st of May, in the 8th of December, and the gay marches and so on. So we have some potential power in the society. And the unions are in a still moment. The workers are seeing what's going on with this conservative government pressured by the far-right fascist party. The workers in general had good conquests from the former government. It was a social democrat government with the support of Balco and other left parties. A lot of rights that were taken out by the conservatives before were restored, and their wages went up and pensions. So they are seeing what's coming. What are they? Everybody's expecting a change in the labor law, and that will be the moment for some bigger fights from workers' unions and the working class in general. And now the resistance is collectively about public services. The unions and the left parties all are together on that, because they want to privatize health and education and social security. And but we have a technical, bizarre situation that we can't define yet, because yesterday we approved in Parliament medication free medication for diabetic people, and we stopped in Parliament the privatization of the public channel on TV. With what? With the votes of the fascists. It's incredible. It's quite, because all the left and the center left was united on that purpose. The proposition was coming from Balco. but the conservatives were against, but the fascists made the difference, and they supported our positions. So it's difficult now to explain a lot of things to the people. We have to refresh communication because it's a bit confusing for everybody, those deals in Parliament. So I think that we can maneuver and have a good situation. We are going to make an essay of a united left in the local elections next year in the capital. So we want to defeat the conservatives and the far right in the capital. It's for us very important because if we win those elections in the capital with a vast alliance, we can prepare a different general elections coming the afterwards. So we are in a middle way of something. We are in an indefinite situation in Portugal, but I think we can manage that. The fascist party in Portugal is founded by the big capitalists. It's public and notorious. And they have upper class votation as well as very poor people voting. They are interclassed party. But they have no body in unions so far. They have no social movements except for militias against migrants. So we have a field to conquer of civil society and mobilizing people for those fights in the civil society.
That kind of connects to a point Lee made earlier, which I wanted to ask a question about, which is that Lee said that parties today are not mass movements. And often, left populist movements in the 2010s, if we think of Podemos or France Insoumise and so on, they kind of criticized the way that democracy had been captured by elites and wasn't a mass mobilizing process. But often those movements themselves became very top-heavy, very dominated by political professionals or NGOs and so on. They weren't really able to build sort of mass parties. But do you think that and if we think of like the mass socialist or communist parties of the past, often they had very powerful structures for politicizing, educating people, taking people from maybe even low kind of education or income and making them into sort of politicians and cadres and so on. So do you think that model is just dead and belongs to a society that has passed, or is it something we should be rebuilding? I asked Lee to start.
I mean, it's absolutely something. I mean, the model in itself is something we should be rebuilding, but in what form? I think that's an interesting question as well, because if you look at what a lot of movements or politicians are doing with social media at the moment, I think a lot of it is actually quite traditional political education in a way. You have all, both in the far right, but also in the left, you have a lot of kind of successful examples of people also in the US who are basically doing political education through different means of social media. The challenge with that is the emancipatory part. I mean, it's easily just you can get kind of a dialogue, but it's not like building a community in the sense that you used to do in these big organizations. So indeed, I mean, in the parties we try to do this. I know the Youth League tries to do this. I know the unions try to do this. But I think the big challenge is also like, how do you reach out to people? How do you get them involved and to stay in this very individualized time when everybody is kind of wanting to, everybody's busy and there's a lot of different, not just your jobs, but your families and everything else that demands your time. This is something we are talking about in the parties all the time. So I think, creating ways for political education using social media, I think that is good, because I think the far right has been quite successful actually in that. They are building base, they are spreading arguments, they are kind of spreading political education through their own channels, and we should be doing the same, and we can do the same because we have good examples of it. And then on top of that, also thinking about new ways to create, community organizing, whether it's in the parties or the unions, where you could create kind of a more lasting form of participation for people. I don't want to sit here and say that we have cracked this and, come up with the perfect way of doing it, but I absolutely think it's something that we should be doing.
Because, the title of this session is War of Position. So the idea is of that phrase, the expression is building power, not just representation.
Yeah.
But what examples are there of that really happening?
I think the US in a way is interesting, because you also saw in different states now in the election, you actually saw these conflicting election results where the voters at the same time might have given their votes to Trump, but then they also voted on progressive policies, right? So you got majorities for progressive policies regarding abortion rights or certain social rights at the same time. So I do think that there are examples of successful kind of power building in terms of political communication that you do have. You have Bernie Sanders, AOC, I think does this quite well, and also in how you kind of are able to communicate and build movements around certain policies. Whereas the kind of elite of the Democratic Party clearly did not do that, and they have not been interested in using the good examples that they have even in their own party structures of people actually being quite successful in political education parts. Then look at Donald Trump. What he did do for his campaign, he went to all the podcasts that the young kind of male voter base listens to. That's also a form of political education nowadays, right? Will clearly in a way that at least it looks to me that it also has had an empowering effect, because in a way it also creates communities. They create communities around their podcasts and in their kind of social media scenes online. So I think it was a huge mistake also of the Democratic Party kind of not to go into those spheres to go on and have the political fight also in those spheres of influence. Of course they should go there and take up the fight for that voter base and for those spaces, and for the political education happening there.
Okay, so the issue of mass parties, mass movements in the Eastern Bloc, of former Eastern Bloc, is a little bit different, I believe, from the West. So scenarios like Podemos, La France Insoumise are not really possible to replicate in Poland, at least now, because we come from the regime where there was one party, and many people just joined the party to get benefits in terms of easier career progress and stuff like that. And this unfortunately carried over in the 90s and in the 2000s. So in that regard, joining a party in Poland often is viewed as an opportunistic move, that you want to get ahead in life somehow. You're in it for the money. So this is something that is really, really difficult to explain. And this also results in and it also has its problems, because parties really, really often betray their base in Poland. Like Donald Tusk, for example, I don't know for how many, at least since 2011, he promises some same-sex partnerships to the same people, and they never come to be. He has the same promise for the elections in 2011, 15, 19, 23, still nothing. Always there is some obstacle, there is some problem, there's some minority in the party that tries to block it. Now the agrarian party is blocking it. So and the same goes with with the post-communists. I co-wrote the program that we ran under in 2023 and 2019, and there were clear things like increasing the funding for healthcare, funding for public housing, more funding for science, higher education, and they have broken all those three promises. They also have folded on the issue of migration, of asylum. The majority of the party voted for this law, which meant that people could be shot at the Polish-Belarusian border with impunity. So this means betrayal, and this means distrust, and if there is anything between the parties and the movement and the movements that is most difficult to mend is this distrust. It's like this feeling that the parties are always trying to exploit you, to get your votes, just to get ahead, and then forget about you. And this is a problem. And we don't really have mass parties in Poland. Like Razem is a pretty small party, especially after we split from the bloc with the post-communists, because of all those broken promises. And we had some more issues, but we are small, but we are maybe 20 times smaller than the governing party in Poland, which is really huge and has a really huge influence. So we are not talking about millions of members. We are not talking about hundreds of thousands of members. The biggest parties in Poland have tens of thousands, 20, 30,000 people in them. The biggest one allegedly has about 80,000 people. So, and this is this agrarian party which is everywhere in the rural areas and holds a lot of power and gets a lot of money from those positions. So those grounds are not really good to building mass movements, and a lot of work will have to be done to mend it. And for that, the movements need a reliable partner in politics, because those big establishment parties do not provide this partnership. We maybe at Razem have little power now, but at least we are reliable. When we promise something, we vote for it. We talk about it. We further this agenda, and we are not afraid of electoral defeats, because we don't have much to lose. If we lose our values, we have nothing. If we go against our program, we essentially again have nothing, and we could just as well join the post-communist party in the camp of the parties that do not respect their own program.
I'm interested when I know, of course, you're saying it's slightly tongue in cheek. You have nothing to lose, because I live in Berlin, in Germany, and where Die Linke risks falling out of parliament, and clearly the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation, which is linked to the party, has a very important role in as an activist space and in funding initiatives and so on. And I kind of wonder, as parliamentary parties of the left, what can you do that isn't just voting through progressive laws or taking stands in parliament, but what can you do to actually support social movements? What can you practically do to open up space? Luis, your party supported a government recently. You weren't directly in the government, and you passed some good reforms. But like, what kind of thing can you do to use the position in parliament to help the movements outside it?
I think that the problem here is not about the social movements, but about the parties. The warring position, Gramsci said, is fighting for institutions. For that, we can building popular power, and the party should fight for those positions in a democratic way, with popular support, but never leave the link with social movements. So if we have a party synchronized with the social movements, we can have that kind of relationship. It's something that is in the core of our political line. If you keep that in political line, and if you guarantee, coming from the party, that there are no representative people that rules the party, but the party rules representative people. So it's a kind of guarantee of your project, political project. Of course, MPs can have a different position on this and that, but in general, in the important positions of the party, they are obliged to follow the lines of the party. So in that situation, we can offer a responsible position to the social movements and help them. And they help us. It's a reciprocal relationship.
I think in Finland we've also been thinking a lot about how to establish kind of direct contacts to people. Like you don't always have to be a party member or a member of some social movement or trade union. And during this new right-wing government, we did a campaign when they were doing heavy cuts in the benefits linking to housing, which was especially affected many working poor, people with low wage that live in cities with high rent. So you get a subsidy for paying the rent that they were doing heavy cuts in. And it was not it's a kind of a simple idea in a way, but we just started messaging out, like, tell us how this will affect you. And we will use the space in plenary to read your story. And we got 2,000 replies from people. And they were not party members. They were not union activists. They were really like ordinary people, many women, single parents, some who were on sick leave and so on, like people we do not have contact with normally, that send us their story. And because they cannot, as long as the parliamentarians want to talk, you can talk in plenary. So we just read out the stories one by one during several days. It took several days in plenary. In a way, I think it was. We discussed it afterwards that we need to think about more ways to do that, because in a way I think it's using the parliamentary space for people's own voices in a way that you usually don't get access to in that way. And we got a lot of response also from people who were really thankful for the left party just acting as a channel for them. So this is also something, and just an example of how you can work that we want to continue with also later on. And in the party, we have also tried to develop ways in which you participate the membership directly. So it's not always the party, you have to choose a representative who chooses a representative that goes to the Congress. So when we choose party leader, or if we go into government, we will have a membership vote also on the government program. So when you have like a negotiated deal, the government program, you put it to a vote in the whole membership of the party. So using those kind of tools to hopefully kind of increase also the membership base and enable more direct participation.
That's something, I don't know if it is an Albanian peculiarity, but we have a pretty passive political culture, which is a mixture with vanguardism in politics. A lot of our supporters tell us, we will vote for you. We will ask people several weeks before the general election to vote for you, but we are not coming to be active members of your party or of your organization. 2 years ago, we started to build the Vizia Bashk, and we intended it as a mass political party. But so far, we somehow have failed to do it. We are reaching sympathizers, we are reaching potential voters. We are very hopeful to reach an important result in the next general election. But common people will tell us, okay, we will vote for you. But what we need is not a massive popular structure. What we need is a strong leader. What we need is for you to somehow raise your voice and become like this ultra vanguardist. So this is some kind of paradox. On the other hand, we have this collective action paradox, because the majority of the people will benefit from policies for which very few people have really fought. You know, a core of activists has fought very hard. So it is even a cultural problem, I think. Maybe decades ago, parties were places of, you know, being part of a community. Nowadays, I don't think it's very easy to somehow to conceive a political party as a way of life, as, you know, belonging to it. Okay, this is true for hundreds of core activists, which is very, very important to have this core of activists, but I'm not very optimist when I see society at large, you know, because people will say, I do 2 jobs, I work 6 days a week, 7 days a week. I don't have time to be active. I don't have time to participate in a protest. Our most successful protest has been in recent weeks in Albania with pensioners, because these are the only people who have enough time to engage in politics, you know. And we are building a very good core of activists, which are old people, you know, pensioners, which is quite interesting. But of course, even traditionally, we have a lot of we have a lot of impact from vanguardism, you know. Have a core of activists, and they will somehow magically sort everything out, which is not good, but it is very difficult to overcome.
I have to say, there's a saying in Finnish politics that you never piss off the pensioners, because that's a political force that will destroy you.
We, as a political party, already come from to the 2 different congresses, which is one is based in Istanbul, so-called the People's Democratic Congress, and the second one is Kurdish city in Diyarbakir, Democratic Society Congress. This is not a political party, and this is a kind of a ground for the people to come and involve to politics. And they have their own assembly, LGBT assemblies, women assemblies, youth assemblies, and DEM party itself coming from that social movements and represent those people at the parliament. So for us is engaging with the politics and with the social movements. It's kind of a necessary. It's not a choice, because every day, every single day, you are being attacked and targeted by the government, by the state, as a working class, as a woman, as a Kurd, as a different religious identity. So you have to be engaged with the social movements and directly also with the political parties to keep survive. So it's for us, it's kind of the normal and necessary.
Yeah. So in our case, reaching the pensioners is really, really hard, because they usually use different communication channels than us, and our base is pretty much young. It's getting older by the day because the time progresses, but it's we still have a lot of time until our average age reaches retirement. So yeah, this is hard, because like those people are pensioners are often very apathetic when it comes to politics, and they mainly follow mainstream media, mainly television, and there is really, and it is really hard to get there. So this is a group which is very difficult for us to reach. But in terms of membership, we sometimes encourage people to join the party, not be very active, just maybe come to a gathering once a year, vote in internal elections, but pay membership dues. And this is very important for us, because Razem does not receive any like government support, which often is the case. This is the result of running with the post-communists and at their lists. So they are receiving all the support. We are receiving nothing. And especially recently, over the summer, when we had some serious arguments over the country's next year budget, now that we split from them, it's even more difficult for us. And every membership fee is very valuable to us. Okay, I maybe have been talking a little bit mysteriously about the split. So essentially, the issue is that the country's budget for 2025 includes cuts for higher education, includes not enough budget increases for healthcare, and includes money not for public housing, but for paying banks and real estate the developers to build the housing, which inflates the prices, which increases the sizes of the loans that you have to take, and essentially screws over many young people. And this is one of our main vectors of attack right now. We are pushing this thing that this system with housing is essentially terrible. It also helps that many of those new houses, new flats are in the places where there is no planning of the public space, so there are no public services, and we have a pretty good line of attack. But okay, so but the split was about the budget, and the budget, there was. Before the discussion over the budget, we were in one parliamentary group with the post-communists, but they were okay with us voting differently. This time, they said some conditions that because they are in the government, they cannot afford us to be against the budget. So the red line was either we vote against the budget or we stay in this parliamentary group. And this has caused some issues within our party because some people decided to stay in the parliamentary group and leave the party. It was essentially an opportunistic move, but in that way we have lost half our parliamentary representation. Thankfully, the membership base is more reasonable, and we lost less than 2% of our membership base in that movement. So this was, let's say, a split on from the top, and because the split was also badly organized and incompetent in that way, we still are together and we still are strong, but we really need those membership fees to survive, and at least until 2027. Because the government support depends on the election results, so we really hope to build our party enough to run in those elections and get the support, because it is a matter of growing further.
Okay. So in the best traditions of vanguardism, we started half an hour late. I've left no time for questions from the audience, so I'm very sorry about that. But of course, we'll have plenty more time to discuss today and over lunch and so on. So I'd like to thank again all of our speakers, particularly ones who have to run to the airport, for the patience. Thanks everyone.
Thanks for tuning in. To find every other episode, follow our feed. This episode was produced by Lab-Left-nek. Thanks to everyone who made it possible.
Muzsikál a világ, velem örül a nyár, tudom én, jön a fényborús napok után. Hozd vissza őt, végtelen nagy szerelem.